Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. I come to you tonight with a parent who is very disappointed with her experience with the criminal justice system. Her daughter was charged with evading arrest. She reached out to me for help. She chose another lawyer, or her family chose another lawyer. I support her. And after it was over, she called me more with her frustrations. And so because I created this TV show for us to learn about the criminal justice system through people's stories, Cynthia Rushing has so graciously agreed to tell her story. So we will jump right into it with her telling her story and her frustrations, and I will try to answer her questions about the system, help her to understand, help you to understand, and help us to be more politically aware of what's going on around us and with our children. So, Cynthia, talk to me. Tell me what's going on.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share my story with your viewing audience. I've never been in the criminal system at all. Beyond a traffic ticket, I've not been in the courts. But now, as a mother of teenagers, I'm kind of thrust into this. So my daughter, as you mentioned, she was arrested for evading arrest. So she was 18, home from college, finished up her freshman year at a prestigious HBCU on scholarship. And she is in a place where she shouldn't have been. She went up to the high school to visit her friend.
And this is the high school that she went to.
No, it's actually not the high school.
But it's her friend's high school.
It's her friend's high school. So it's her friend's high school.
So she's home.
She's home. Just got home. Yeah.
She's going to visit friends at a high school that she's familiar with.
Yeah, she's familiar. So this is supposedly her friend, and so but the friendship is very tumultuous, and so so at any rate, she's on the campus and she sees a police officer, and he says, "Hey, you." So she just gets in her car and leaves. Well, he didn't like that, so he gets in his car and follows her.
Wow.
So he follows her, and so she doesn't stop. She keeps going, and at the end of the pursuit, there were 9 police officers, so they had basically emptied out the whole Rosenberg Police Department, chasing her. And the way that the pursuit ended was that she crashed out. So she crashed out and could have been killed. She hit a dump truck, totaled the car beyond recognition. You couldn't even recognize the car. Everyone was amazed that she walked out without a scratch. So praise God for that.
Praise God.
And so so she's arrested. So once I find out that she was arrested, and it was like, well, why were you chasing her? What was the charge? And they said that that it was harassment. Someone had called and said that she was on the campus harassing a student. And so I'm like, okay, so what are you charging her for? So they didn't charge her for anything but the evading arrest. So again, I was like, okay, evading arrest, that's a misdemeanor. We'll be fine. I'll, what's the bond? I'll post bond, get her a good attorney. Just, grateful that, she was alive. And then I started reading up on, the penalty associated with evading arrest, and found out it's a felony, a 3rd-degree felony that has up to 10 years of jail time. So mind you, I have an 18-year-old that we've invested a lot into her future, and now she's faced with jail time. So quite devastated. She was extremely depressed, and it was like, how do we, get past this? So, so I did reach out to you for legal defense, but we chose an attorney that was more familiar and, I guess, I don't know what to say, more familiar in the Fort Bend arena. So. So anyway, so we go through that, and I was quite disappointed at the end with the defense that we did get, because what I didn't know about my attorney was that my attorney is more of a negotiator versus a defender. So what do I mean by that? my attorney is very good and effective in having pleas, accepting plea bargains and basically settling out of court versus, really eager to go to trial and put on an aggressive defense. So with that being said, we took a plea, and the actual sentence or agreement was 4 years probation. It was deferred adjudicated, 4 years probation, 200 hours of community service, a domestic violence course. I think it's a 16-week course, and some other minor things. So we were pretty thrilled that we got deferred adjudicated, and it was like, okay, so once she finishes this up, it will be removed from public record. So we were pretty excited about that. And then when I started inquiring about, okay, how soon can, what do we need to do to make sure that it's sealed? Found out that no, it won't be sealed right after she completes the probation. It'll be 5 years afterwards. So it's like, oh my goodness, the best case scenario for her, not having this on her public record, available on public record, is 7 years, because the probation can be released or reduced to 2 years midway if she's completed the community service and all the other requirements. So the best case for her is 7 years. So this is an 18-year-old going to school.
On scholarship that now she's lost.
Yeah, and then, can't really participate as a college student, with internships and, just some of the wonderful opportunities that the students get. And this is, pretty much the highlight of her life during this particular time. So, she's pretty much lost all her, excitement and zeal for life. So it's just like, she has suicidal comments and just very depressed. And it's like, okay, how do I keep her encouraged, as well as say, we got to stop this in terms of, evading arrest. Why are you chasing?
Well, first of all, let me ask you this. In the investigation, did y'all find that the officer who asked her to leave was really investigating a harassment case? What I'm confused about is if he told her to leave and she left, what's the reason for the chase?
He didn't tell her to leave because he never had a conversation with her.
Okay, so he just said, hey.
He just said, hey. She kept going, and for him, it was like...
But wasn't that what he wanted, her to leave?
Well, I believe so.
Right. So why chase someone that you've asked to leave?
Exactly.
I mean, because ultimately that's what he would have done. Mm-hmm. He had no reason to arrest her.
Right.
People don't arrest, say if it's telephone harassment or something like that, before an officer files charges or arrests you, they get their telephone records just to prove that you've called someone too many times.
Right.
So obviously he didn't have that. So if he's a campus police and someone's reported to the campus police that, hey, my friend is over here bothering me, or someone's here that we don't want on the campus, that's the purpose of the campus police, is to tell you to leave. So if she left as she was ordered to do or expected to do, I don't understand. I mean, he wasn't going to arrest her for anything.
No.
He couldn't have arrested her because she hadn't committed a crime in his presence, nor had anyone sworn to her committing a crime. So it's unfortunate that she got scared and left, but it appears that was the right thing to do. If she shouldn't have been there and someone wanted to leave. But the scary part is the officer started chasing her.
Yep. And, for her, so the million-dollar question is, well, why didn't you stop? Right. And I don't know, I had to put myself in the mind of an 18-year-old and said, hey, she was just scared. And then when it intensified, her adrenaline flowed.
And that's the thing, the officer's adrenaline flows too.
Yeah.
And that's what requires a lot of split-second decisions. And the problem that the system has gone through now is she's a child, and instead of people saying, well, she was in a bad accident, she could have been killed, evaluating the officer, everyone in law enforcement, the government, everybody in the government that works for the government is going to be on his side.
Right.
Instead of evaluating what he did, and I understand an officer's job is hard, so you don't want them to be evaluated all the time and second-guessed all the time, but that's why I think there's so many calls for police chase policy. When do you chase? Because his adrenaline should have stopped once she left, and he should have just been on guard to make sure she didn't come back. because the issue was to get her off the campus, and she left. So why are you chasing her? What are you going to do? Question her? She has a constitutional right not to say anything.
Right.
So were you going to arrest her? Were you going to antagonize her so that she could say something or do something to get arrested for? I mean, what was the point? So, but no one, what's frustrating to me is no one looks at this opportunity, looks at the fact she's an 18-year-old kid home from college, it's on the citizen side, but yet we pay this officer's salary and everybody else, the DA, the officer, the prosecutors, but no one's going to question evading arrest or detention. Now, if it's a traffic stop and you don't stop in a motor vehicle, that's another thing, you didn't stop. But he wasn't chasing her on a drive. So to me, it was a case that should have gone to trial. But I'm saying that emotionally listening to you. The fears that 90% of all lawyers have, including me, is the worst case scenario.
Right.
What if jurors see it a different way?
Right.
But I guess in my mind, without investigating, I didn't see the police report, I didn't investigate it, I still would need to know, why are you chasing her? If your goal was to even if you said, hey, you're still going to say, leave.
Right.
I mean, if she doesn't belong on that campus, they're going to tell her to leave. If she's not a student on that campus, or if she didn't go to the proper visitation procedures by going to the front office and giving her driver's license, then he was going to tell her to leave. So I don't need to come here to leave. So I think to me, I wish that you would write letters to the school board, the school, the Rosenberg Police Department. If that is your goal, is to ask someone to leave and they leave, then maybe you should take their license plate number down, or stand around until school's off to make sure that they don't come back in the parking lot. Sometimes people leave, they wait about 10, 15 minutes and they come back when they feel the officers aren't there. But what is the best thing to do? And sometimes officers, when their adrenaline is flowing, instead of reacting and calling, because what did he say on the dispatch tape to the other officer for them?
Well, that's my question. So why did 8 other cruisers follow in?
He called for them.
Yeah.
But what did he say that crime she had committed? Not stopping when he said stop on foot, because the issue is he wanted her to leave and she left.
Yeah, I have.
So
no
why
idea.
scare her?
And yeah, exactly. And so
see, whenever officers do things that are questionable, they charge you with a crime. So then they're not asked about why they did something. Then you're on the defensive. And if you're on the defense, you're not going to go file a complaint against this officer, because then it's going to look like you're retaliating for getting filed. So when officers are 50-50 on what they should be doing, they always file charges on you. If they manhandle you, they charge you for resisting arrest, when in actuality you haven't punched them in the face, you haven't resisted arrest. And that's why I think one of the calls to arms on what's going on in society right now is let's reevaluate police training and get more citizen and police interaction involvement, in policies and procedures. So we know, when do you chase someone?
Yeah. Well, I asked that question, and I was told by the attorney was that the officer, I guess there's a gray area, if he thought this may have been a felony. Well, how did you think it may have been a felony? Maybe why is she running? So maybe they knew she didn't have a warrant out for her arrest. So the only other thing they could think of is maybe, there's drugs. So when they stopped her, they took her to the emergency room just to check her out. So I wasn't happy about that, because I think it was something else that they did. But anyway, they took the drug test. So she had no drugs in her system. So there was nothing. And so all you can charge her for is evading arrest. But what led up to her evading arrest? Why were you pursuing her?
Well, evading arrest means you're trying to arrest somebody. So what were you arresting her for?
Exactly.
So that has to be the first question. But a lot of lawyers are scared to buck the system because they have no backup. Judges don't have bosses but the voters, and the voters don't care if it's not affecting their children.
Right.
And the DAs don't have a boss except the voters, and the voters keep voting them in. The same judges and the same, so they feel like whatever they do is right.
And then the other tough thing is that because she's 18, it's, okay, to me, she's still a child.
Of course, but she's still paying for her life.
Exactly. But she's 18, so everyone's looking, so what do you want to do, 18-year-old? And for me, it's like, I say let's fight. Her father is saying, no, let's take it. She's like, I just want it to be over with. So we go down this path. And then when the dust settled, it's like, this probably wasn't the right path for us to take.
I know. So tell me how it's been affecting her in terms of her trying to get a job or her scholarships. And she come home for college. Tell me about why was she able to return back to college?
Well, actually, she was transferring from the HBCU that she was attending. She goes to a school that's closer in town. So she didn't return, so she didn't have the scholarship. So, but it's an in-state school, so it's not as expensive as an out-of-state private school. But in terms of finding a job, she can't even get a job at Whataburger.
Tell me why not? How is that working?
Yeah, so what happens is that first of all, there's the question on the application that says it's no longer have you committed a felony. It is are you on probation? Have you ever been deferred, adjudicated? So they're asking all of these cascading questions about the whole criminal activity or history. So for her, if she answers yes, then she's immediately disqualified, eliminated, and so she can't get employment. And so that's pretty depressing for her because now she's missed out on the internships. Because of course, if she was applying for a Fortune 500 company, they were going to do an extensive background check.
Exactly.
But just your local places in town, she's not able to, get employment. So her best bet is to, reach out to entrepreneurs and see if, she can find work there. But it's just really, really tough. So for her psyche is, I might as well just give up because, as a 19-year-old, now she's 19, at 19, this is bigger than life for her.
Right.
And so it's just, and of course, she's not telling everyone, or anyone. So while her friends are doing things and they're like, well, why don't you do them? Why don't you come along? And she already knows what the outcome's going to be. So
she can't go.
Yeah. And so she's very withdrawn. And one of the things on probation is that she can't be around alcohol. So on college campus, parties, that's what they do.
That's what they do.
So for her, her whole college experience is, going to be plain vanilla.
Well, what about how is it impacting her to do community service? Because that's a lot. And is she driving since her car was totaled? How is that?
Yeah, so transportation is an issue. And so with the community service, she had one probation officer, the first one, who basically said, I understand your situation, so why don't you just take care of your community service during the summer months? So she said, okay. Well,
so she wasn't going to go to school during the summer months?
No, she wasn't going to go to school during the summer months. So she would be, basically home, and she can, go to community service, during the week, and, basically, get all the hours that she needed to complete the requirement. Well, her probation office, she got a new probation officer.
Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
Caller, I see someone's calling. Please turn your TV down or your computer volume down, and then start talking to me. Thank you for calling.
Yes, good evening, ladies. I have a question. Was it a high-speed chase?
Yes.
How did the chase pursue? They told her to wave and say, hey, and she got her car and left. What made the police chase her? What happened?
So I wasn't there, but as she left out of the parking lot, she probably left trying to get away. Not going at a high speed at first, but when the officer came after her and he's coming faster because there's a gap, she's already in the vehicle and he had to get in his vehicle. So while she sees that he's coming after her, she's trying to get away. So it was a high speed chase. It probably, there's a dash cam video. So she was probably going at least 80, 90 miles an hour. So this was a Lexus 350.
Okay.
And so yeah, it was high speed chase. And oddly enough, she actually eluded the officers and got away from the chase. She pulled over on a side road and she waited there for about 10 minutes, and then when she got back on the road, they said, I spot her, and then they came after her again.
How did she crash out?
Yeah, so she crashed out on some FM road, and so it was a dump truck coming. It could have been a head-on collision. She fishtailed, trying to avoid. He hit her, and of course, he said he was injured and totaled out his dump truck.
Okay. Well, this is, and of course, I'm not on the police side for anything, but I think the mistake for her was taking off on the high speed chase, because she endangered her life, and she just should have pulled over to the side and and see what was going on. And I think if she would have did that, things would have been a lot different.
Oh,
Turned
yeah.
out a lot different from her. Adrenaline rush or not, if the young lady would have just pulled over and hopefully, had her camera, her phone on her and videotape what's going on, I think a lot of that could have been avoided. And what was she convicted on?
Just evading arrest.
Evading arrest in a motor vehicle, but it used to be a misdemeanor, then it was state jail, now it's a third-degree felony, so it's 2 to 10, and she was on a scholarship to a HBCU, very smart young lady. Just home for the holidays, visiting a friend at a high school campus, so it turned bad. A friend that got mad at her and didn't want her there, but still visiting a friend. Or someone she thought was a friend.
Exactly.
That apparently called the police on her.
And she didn't know.
And she didn't know. So she didn't know that the police were being called on her. So she just thought when the police came to her, they just wanted her to leave because she's not supposed to be there.
Yeah, that's too bad. I hope the best for her.
Thank you.
Eventually she'll get over that. It's not, if they're gonna, adjudicate, or she'll be okay in the long run. And hopefully you get her some counseling, or, get her mind right.
Yep.
Because it could have been a lot worse.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for calling. Do I still have another call holding? Okay. Call back, caller, if you were holding on. We can talk to you now. So anyway, so is there another call? Okay, well, please turn your volume down, and then when you got it down, I'm ready to talk to you. Thank you for calling.
Okay, I'm here.
Hey, how are you?
How you doing, Miss King? This is Tracy again.
Tracy, I haven't talked to you in a long time. I thought you abandoned me.
Oh, no. It ain't been that. Just been working and watching online. And then sometimes the show be so interesting, I don't want to interrupt the flow. But
Gotcha.
I must say, you looking darling tonight.
Thank you. I do what I can for old lady.
Yeah. And then to your guest, you looking nice too, Miss Cynthia Rushing.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, now, it's really sad to me. I get tired of seeing stuff like this. You got young people in life getting ruined at an early age. And then she was actually trying to do something, I mean, that really breaks my heart to see something like that happen. But, the same thing happened to me at a young age, too. I was just able to recover from it, and it was actually my fault, So, my heart goes out to you, and I wish you the best of luck.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for your support. We appreciate you.
Okay, thanks for taking my call.
Okay.
All right, love you. Bye.
Love you too, sweetheart. Let me tell you what has just popped in my mind, which we should advocate for, because we're going to try to turn some of this anger and frustration into action. Although I know we're going to talk about that maybe toward the end. We got about 5 minutes to 7, so
okay.
let's talk about that later. Okay. Because a new thought came in my mind I never thought before. So, but anyway, let's talk about the probation issue.
Yeah, so we were talking about the community service, and so it is very difficult for her, to complete the community service at the rate.
And what about the car? That's what I want to know. Does she have a car?
Yeah, so no, she doesn't have the car. So
she has no car.
So she doesn't have a car. So it requires me having to go and take her and drop off and pick her up. So that's one issue. And so the other thing about the community service is when you think of community services, I'm thinking, hey, you're helping, the people that are in need. That's one aspect of community service. But what community service really is about, free labor and cutting yards and cutting trees and painting buildings and so forth. And so I kind of pause on that, and it gives me a little bit of concern as to, Okay, so what are we really trying to teach, the kids or the people that are actually on probation, and recognizing that, the penitentiary is really around free labor, and they're basically making things for profit for someone else. And so I guess I'm not seeing the real benefit of the whole community service in terms of, helping others. So why can't community service be more around, the food bank and, doing something that's good for the community
Or the
versus
homeless.
yeah.
What is she doing? What is her community
So
service?
most of her community service has been, or all of her community service has been basically lawn service.
So she's mowing lawns?
Yeah, mowing lawn.
What kind of lawns? Government lawns?
Yeah, government lawns. Yeah, like the library. Yeah,
So basically, the government is making her do free labor
exactly.
instead of. And the thing that's kind of, I mean, I can see it being okay, but I guess the thing that kind of strikes me, like you said, is that first of all, you pay to be on probation, so you're paying the government, so
Yep.
that should be a washout.
Yep.
And then to do something for the government is one thing, but you, like you said, you should be doing things like getting graffiti off of walls
Yep.
of a government building. That's fine. But like you said, working at some of the nonprofits,
Yes.
like the food pantries and things where people have a hard time getting labor. So I can see you being concerned. But see, that's all still the same people. The same people are over community service, probation.
Yep.
These the director is appointed by, the commissioners
It's
who are elected.
incestuous. It's just incestuous.
It's
I mean-
incestuous. It's incestuous. And so somebody decided, shoot, we don't have to pay
Right.
as much money for lawn service. Now, if somebody's doing lawns, they need to be staffed by the government to do lawns because they need to make sure that they know how to cut lawns and grass. They're not throwing rocks, into people's, you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
that's still an art to that. People need to know what they're doing. Me cutting a yard is not going to be the same as my yard man.
Well, I'm
who's
not sure.
experienced.
I'm not sure that it's really for the way it's been described to me, as if they actually have a lawn service company. It's just giving them busy work.
Well, I mean,
And
but there are so many nonprofits that you could be
Exactly.
doing stuff for.
Exactly.
But anyway, that would take more work.
Or senior communities. Just I
Doing
don't know.
something for senior communities. Right. Wow. So then we have all the fees. What are her fees every month?
Yeah. So her fees $40.
That's it. What about court costs and all that? No more. Just $40 flat.
Well, what's court costs? So the court cost was, I want to say $350, and then there was another cost. There was two costs. So it was one court cost, and then it was
Might have been a fine.
the fine, right? So that was the $300, and then there was a payment that needed to go to Crime Stoppers. I think that was $50.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, and then she has to go listen to Crime Stopper. It's not a video, but it's actually a panel with Crime Stoppers of victim impact.
And that's usually just for DWI people, but apparently they have another one. But let's talk about the 16-month domestic violence class.
Yeah,
And that's usually geared toward older people. So I don't even know if an 18 or 19-year-old would benefit for that. Because those programs, as I know of them, they're designed for, people who have been married or are going back and forth between violence and getting back together, but they have a more recognized relationship, not an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend from high school and you're not at college and you coming back and visiting them and seeing them, and you really hadn't been seeing them anyway, and so you're just harassing them, so they tell you to leave and you leave. I mean, that's not domestic violence. I mean, to me, and this is what makes me mad, because the people who are telling you what to do on probation are usually just about 26 to 30 themselves, because they're right out of law school, and they're deciding the programs, and everybody knows it's right. I mean, for a child her age, she could get some therapy. Because for whatever issue she's dealing with, that she still was dealing with someone juvenile that she, a senior
or
that she didn't
even
want to deal
anger
with.
management.
Anger management or
would
something
have been
like
more
that.
appropriate.
More
but-
appropriate, but domestic violence, she's not in a relationship where she's going back and forth to go through that cycle of domestic abuse, because there's a sociology cycle of, love, hate, tug of war, and that's what they're teaching. Let's take another call.
Okay.
Caller, please turn your volume down on your radio or computer and start talking to me. Thank you for calling.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me very well?
I
Hi, this is
can.
Cheryl Irvin. How are you doing, Mrs. King?
Good. I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Very good. I would like to ask your guest. It appears that since her child is very young, she doesn't have transportation. seems like you're just as much on probation as your daughter is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She doesn't have transportation. She doesn't have a job, so I'm having to pay the probation fees, all the court costs. So yeah, it's going to be a long road for the both of us over the next 2 to 3 years. My goal is to get her off probation within the 2 years, so that we can start moving towards getting this sealed, getting her record sealed.
Some of your frustration with some of the terms and conditions of probation that didn't seem to be relevant in terms of what she was accused of. But let me ask you about yourself, because it seems to me that as much as this has been a burden financially and time-wise, it seems like it's been an emotional burden on you also. So what have you done to help yourself?
I'm sorry, ask the last question.
She said, this seems to have been an emotional burden on you also, in addition to your daughter, and she can see the toll it's taken on you. What have you done for yourself?
Yeah, so I haven't done anything for myself. I am been extremely diligent on trying to, make sure that my daughter stays mentally sound.
Because her daughter has considered suicide or spoken of it. So it's a very taxing thing. It's not just this situation. It's a family crisis, basically. And she's divorced. And so, it's taxing.
Yeah.
You have any suggestions, Ms. Irvin?
Yes, ma'am. I would suggest that what Ms. King is going to suggest to you is going to be just great. But essentially, it would be good for you and your daughter to meet with a psychiatrist or psychologist. Just sit down and share the trauma of what has happened to you all. Get some professional help and let them, help you get through this hurdle. Because I can clearly see that this has been very harmful to you, clearly harmful to your daughter. So I would ask that you take that extra step and get some counseling for the both of you.
Yep, I totally agree. We started some counseling, but it's been a really challenging time with trying to with school and then the probation and of course she's not staying at home, so it's me having to travel the hour and a half.
Where does she live?
She's at PV.
Oh, she's at Prairie View. Okay.
So it's been, just because of logistics, it's been really tough. So that's one. The second one is finding a therapist that you can relate to.
Yeah, that's difficult.
So then this is trial and error. You go to so we've been to 3 different therapists, and it just wasn't a connection at all.
And that's a logistic nightmare too when you have a child in Prairie View, because then she basically needs to meet on the weekends.
Yeah, exactly.
And most therapists don't work on the weekends. Right. I know a good one I can refer to you off.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I have one last suggestion.
Yes.
I reach back out to the attorney who was representing you and ask her to see can she get some of those community service hours reduced in exchange for her going into counseling, because it just had such a negative effect on her, the whole process.
Okay.
She should be able to get those cut in half, if not cut even more than half.
Yeah, because a lot of times the legislature told us years ago, they changed the law where community service is not required. It used to be required, so it's not mandatory. So every condition should have some meaning to it. And since you know what type of, I agree with you, Ms. Irvin, thank you. With the type of, which they're having to do cut yards when she gets in, is that really meaningful, or would it be more meaningful for you and her to go into counseling, or for her to go into counseling and you can go with her and show those hours?
Yeah,
I would agree. The fact that she's in school.
Out of town.
It's a big factor. That needs to be readjusted quickly.
Well, the probation supervisor, when saw her orders, said that, did your attorney know that you were in school? This is not something that you would give to a college student. This is really setting you up for failure. And so that was another reason why I got on the phone and called Ms. King. So, Ms. King, can you help?
Right.
Yep. So.
And what did I tell you?
Yeah, you should have got me at first.
Right.
Yep, I can agree with that.
Yep. So.
Because I was telling how difficult it is after someone has investigated the whole case and been your lawyer, and then they agree to this punishment. I can't second guess why the lawyer did that, but to go and get conditions changed, that's now you have to have a relationship with the judge, and that's really, I'm at a disadvantage not being in Fort Bend all the time. Right. My best bargaining chip is just going to trial for you. You know what? because I've done the trial in Fort Bend County, and I take cases there. But to get something changed, you really need to go back to the original lawyer. Wouldn't you agree, Ms. Irvin?
I would. That's why I could just reach back out to
And
that
that's why I
lawyer.
told her, just come tell your story then, because that's all I can do for you.
Well, I'm here, and I hope it helps others, really inspire us to be more active in the judicial process. Like I said, I just thought, evading arrest was a misdemeanor and was surprised that it carried this type of punishment. Not that I'm advocating that people evade arrest, but it's the fact that how laws are constantly changing to the detriment of people that look like me.
Yeah, right. Right, because it was, remember, not too long ago, Cheryl Irvin, remember, it was a misdemeanor, even in a car.
Absolutely.
And then it was a state jail. Now it's a third-degree felony in a car, and then she's a college student coming home. I mean, it's like, you know what I was thinking? Let me just get to the new idea I have. I'm always preaching to Cynthia. I've known Cynthia on some other cases. I've helped her with other family members, and so we've known each other. And that's why I could tell her you should have hired me. It was only because we already had a relationship, and she did call me about it. But the thing is, I've always fussed about, because I've run for judge twice, how apathetic professionals are like herself to be involved in the system and what it takes. Now she's gung-ho about changing it. But one of the things that really needs to happen, especially in Fort Bend County, there needs to be a citizenship that watches the courts, maybe some elderly, retired people, not necessarily elderly, but retired. And there needs to be an advocate for kids in the court. Don't you agree? How if there's some government person that's appointed to be government sanctioned, an advocate for kids, kind of like in civil court, Cheryl, when there's an ad litem appointed. Because if I can sue you for a car wreck because you hit me and my children, and we can settle it, say, for $100,000, that's not good enough. The civil courts are going to intervene in that, and they're going to appoint an ad litem just to make sure that I settled it properly for my children. Like, I can't make a decision for my children, which is really another way of another lawyer's got to get paid, and they're going to usually be friends of the judges in the civil courts, and some of them make $1 million a year off just being appointed when another lawyer actually settled the case. You see what I'm saying? So it seems to me that children ought to have an advocate where they get an ad litem appointed, not just in juvenile court, but in state court, in felony court, when they're young adults that are trying to do something, because no one seems to have advocated for this kid.
Well, but the other
and no one has the right to do it. I wish there was a position that required the advocate.
Yeah, but the other thing is that they don't.
Thank you, Cheryl. We're gonna hang up on you.
They don't view her. They don't view her as a kid.
But she is. I mean she doesn't drive. She doesn't have a job. She was a college student. She's a student. So students have to have their own classifications. And we know people are not adults until they're 30, basically. I mean, that's why with Obamacare, he raised the age like 26, yeah. And so, because they're still on their parents.
So is there a model in place somewhere else?
I've never heard of it. Okay. It just came in my mind that it looked like someone needed to have been advocating for her, that the courts would recognize. You see what I'm saying? Her lawyer was advocating for her, but her lawyer really only has a choice to either go to trial or take probation.
Right.
That's basically it. And, but is there someone that the courts would recognize as an advocate? This is too harsh. This child, some criteria. This child has a future. At least to advocate on what probation conditions are, because domestic violence is inappropriate for an 18-year-old that's visiting, an ex-friend or lover at school. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, because that's someone that as soon as they go back to school, then they're still not going to see anymore. So that's not domestic violence. Domestic violence is when two people are voluntarily together. They live in some type of household together, and they keep calling the police and going through this cycle of break up, come back together, break up, come back together. That's when you learn how to break that cycle in domestic violence counseling.
Yeah, and so what will make it tough is that she's not motivated to go to this 16-week.
Because it doesn't apply to her.
Exactly. So it's just like,
that makes you not trust adults in the system. The adults are my authority. They're supposed to be telling me something for my own good, and I have to look and say, yes, thank you for helping me for my own good, for something that doesn't help me at all.
Yeah. And
something nonsensical that doesn't apply to me.
And then when I was looking for the classes, most of them were for men.
I know, for beating up women. Men for beating up women.
Most of them for men, so I got upset over that. And I was just like, this is just ridiculous.
So she'll just be going to a class that doesn't apply to teenagers and doesn't apply to women, because they apply to men. So the only resource would be private counseling or some Christian type of counseling, which they'd never sanction because they wouldn't probably get a piece of the money in it.
Yeah. It's been quite frustrating and very eye-opening for me.
But keep encouraging your daughter like you're doing. I know you will, but also to encourage her. This is why the next generation has to get involved with the political process. This is why you vote. Your lack of voting and your other 18-year-old friends who are rightfully worrying about their own lives, worrying about growing up. But if you get caught up in this system, and a lot more of their friends in the system than our friends ever win the system.
Right.
It's because you don't vote. It's because you let one person stay in charge. It's because you're not, because this can change. I mean, just like when she gets off the probation, say hypothetically it's the whole 4 years, and you have to wait 5 years before you can get it non-disclosed to the public. That can be changed to where it's expunged. That law can be changed. I mean, that's just a law. I mean, it was just on the record forever, and Harold Dutton about 10 years ago asked that it be sealed for deferred adjudications. And it was a seal from everybody, even the government. At every legislative session, every governmental agency started asking, we want to see it. We need to see it. We need to see it. So then it had no juice, no water anymore. But I've been told there are other states that after 10 years of not being in trouble, you can get your whole records expunged, like deleted completely. But that's in other states, and obviously something, I know there's a law similar in Michigan, because I had a lawyer friend tell me about the law in Michigan. So I'm just telling you that what your daughter needs to understand is if some 20 and 30-year-olds go to the legislature, they can change the law. This is just a law. This is just pencil and paper. It doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah, so, I've actually reached out to Harold Dutton. I sent him a letter. I know that it's going to be a long campaign. He hasn't responded, but...
but they are in session.
Yeah, but I'm
right
just
now.
going to continue. I'm just going to continue, and I want to, inspire her to do the same. Right now, she just feels like, she's just overwhelmed.
Right now, you just have to keep her encouraged.
Yeah, but in the meantime, I'm, trying to move forward and saying, what can we do to change? And then...
What do you think we can do to change it?
Oh, wow. Okay, so...
we have 15 minutes.
Okay. So there are a lot of things that we need to do. And so the first one is we have to unite. We have to unite on one cause and just basically stay laser focused on that. So if it is, the judicial system in terms of mass incarceration of African Americans, then, we need to, support elected officials in those positions. Put a dog in the race, in the fight. Hold them accountable. But we don't support. It's amazing to me that George Zimmerman can raise $300,000 in one day for his legal defense, and we, as African Americans, can't support, elected officials
or people who are
representing
trying
us.
to be elected like
Yes.
me. I've had fundraisers where Waverly Nolly gave me a fundraiser one time. Me and two other lawyers. He spent $1,200 on food. We raised about $500 apiece. So we didn't make any money on it. So he might as well give us $1,200.
Exactly.
See? Because people want to come and eat and drink, but they want to put, $10 in the bucket. That's just enough for the food. You know what I mean? So it's just that we want something for nothing, even the people at the top.
Yeah, and so I think that there's a way that we should be strategic about it in educating us to say that, hey, we're going to have to start, putting money in this arena as opposed to just putting money into the economy and being consumers and buying products. We look at the education system, they're not trying to educate our kids, they're trying to incarcerate, the boys. So they're going to put them on drugs, put them in special ed, and then now
Call
they're
the
going
police
down
on them at school.
Yes.
Instead of dealing with the old-fashioned way of school suspension, school teen boards, where we try to work things out, teaching them how to deal with conflict resolution. As soon as a kid does something, I call the police.
Right.
Send them to jail. So what happened to teen advocacy? Teaching kids how to have conflict resolution.
Yeah, so no, I don't see this a system as, trying to prevent anything. It is a system to, lock us up. So with that being said, it's like, how can we leverage what we already have in place where we do have, economies of scale, where we actually participate in large numbers. So one of the things that I think, we need to do is start holding our churches accountable. The churches need to, be on the front line of, these issues. Can't be everywhere, so pick one. Pick one. If it's education, then stay with education. If it is the judicial system, stay with the judicial system. But at the end of the day, we have to, take hold of our future and wake up and start participating. Things are happening. It's just amazing. I'm reading a book now called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. And it's amazing that this has been strategized 50, 60 years ago, after, Jim Crow was banned. So they had to come up with something else. And so that system is in place, and it just seems like it is very sophisticated now. And we seem to be entangled in it and with no real, justice. And there's something that we can do, but we've not united, and we do not want to sponsor.
Right.
And it takes money. It
Right.
absolutely takes money.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so, what do you think what do you think you will do in the future because of this experience?
Well, I've always voted, so that won't be anything new. But what will be new is now I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention to judges. So I am in Fort Bend. And when I look at the ballot and there's a judge that's running unopposed, I'm saying this is ridiculous. So now I am, really eager to find that horse to put in the race.
Right.
And start saying,
And
hey,
you
we
can do
need
that through the Fort Bend County Democratic Party. They find people, but people don't run because this is the issue. If you run against a judge that's an incumbent, then you get blackballed when you lose because the Republicans always win. So then when you have a client in that court, everybody treats you ugly. So that's why it makes practicing lawyers not want to run.
Wow.
So you have to be, like when I ran in 2010, I had to, like by December 2007, I stopped doing a lot of court appointments because I didn't want my livelihood to depend on that. So then I had to make my livelihood depend on a check that wasn't certain, my clients, okay, instead of the check that is certain. But I did all that to get off of that government so that I could be independent. So hopefully it didn't matter in terms of appointments. But it also matters, a lot of people who've run or don't do appointments, but a judge can sway the attitude of a prosecutor and sway the attitude of the courtroom against your client. And so, because like when your daughter got that case, if the judge was mad at your lawyer, they could have added 60 days as a condition. And see, that's something that lawyers don't tell you about because we hope judges don't do it, but it's something that's non-negotiable. We can't negotiate that. Just like the conditions, your lawyer didn't negotiate the conditions so much. You try to, but it's hard. The judge can add conditions now, even though the lawyer is out of it. And so judges will retaliate and and the prosecutors and judges are all friends. They're all intermarried. That's incestuous. And so sometimes then you get bad reputations with the prosecutors because they're mad because they're all Republicans. Everybody, the judges, the DAs, assistant DAs. And so if you run against them and you lose, then everybody is mad at you. Do you understand? Like children, like playground. I mean, it is bad. And so that's why you see people unopposed, because it's going to affect, if I'm running and I lose, it's going to affect how I'm treated with my clients in that court. Because they already know that they're going to win. You understand what I'm saying? So they're already started against
And so
you.
it's like the nerve of you to run against me.
Exactly. When I ran the second time in 2012, I had a Republican judge tell me, laughing, teasing from the bench out loud in front of everybody, I don't know why you running again. You need to either change parties or stop running because you know you're going to lose. You know your people ain't going to come out and vote. Just told me that. And I laughed at it because he's telling the truth. But I said, okay, well, I just got to do what I believe, and I'm not going to change parties just to win. You know, I'm running, with who I am, so I'll just go down with the ship. So I just couldn't say anything because he was right. But, it's interesting when a judge can just talk noise to you. It's nothing you can do because he's right. And the thing is, you have the people to win, but they won't vote.
Well, I don't know.
Apathy has gone on too long. The generation that fought for the Voting Rights Act, they voted and their children voted. But once that we created a heavy welfare and uneducated and go to jail population of parents going to jail and things, that group doesn't vote, and they've taken over. The regular educated people still do vote. It's just not enough numbers.
Yeah, well, I know that my 18-year-old and my 22-year-old will be voting.
Right.
I at least know that. But it really appears to be dismal in terms of, the future. But I think that there's a way that we can get out of this situation. And it really is about being strategic, planning it out and leveraging what we do have. There are a lot of churches and the Fort Bend community. We should be leveraging that.
What do you think you can do through the churches? What do you think? Like, give me an example. If you could go to your own church, what would you do different?
So I would go to my church, and there are a couple of things that we could do. One is identify what our issues are, and when there are candidates that come to the church, and the week of the election, come to the church, but before they come, talk to them about what their positions are about the issues that we have, and not be an issue, your own personal issue, as the head of the church, or not the head, but the pastor of the church, but the issues of the entire congregation as a whole. And so I think that we need to do that and hold them accountable, that they just can't come parading through the church looking for votes. And, hey, we don't even know anything about, their platform. So
Somebody could do some homework on that.
Could do some homework and actually, instead of them
One
just
of the
showing
things
up.
you need to know, I think you need to know, is, first of all, you need to know everybody when they're running for judge, you should need to know how long they've been there, what party they are, and what is their stance on certain issues that affect the community. Okay, you need to know that, and so you can have that type of 1, 2 point, 3 point check. If someone wants to come, this is what they need to address.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel? Our community is hurting, and we feel like we're being disproportionately targeted. How do you feel about that? How do you address that concern for that portion of your county? Is it addressed at all, or you just let it go, let the same thing happen that's always happened? Or do you try to help with that effort for there to be fairness? Or are you just trying to get a check and to go home?
Well, it's interesting that, that never happens. I see them, they come to the church, and
because the preachers just want to say, oh, I know them, and that, but they're not really.
Exactly.
They're not really putting together. If you come here, this is what you need to address.
Exactly.
Because this is what my people want to know. And if you're not going to address that, don't come through here.
Right.
Right.
So I would go to my church and say, hey, let's handle election season differently, and hold the elected officials, or the ones that are actually pursuing this office, hold them accountable, have a conversation, let them know, as opposed to giving them the platform to be able to wave to the congregation, hey, I'm here, vote for me, but really bring some substance. And let
me ask you this: when you do this with your church, you add some substance to it and get some education to your preacher and to your congregation. Maybe you could speak first, and let me tell you why. If you target the Black or Hispanic or the minority, say Congress people or state representatives, remember, if they're a Democrat, in our house in Texas and in our house in Congress, it's mostly Republican. So even though you ask them, what are you going to do, they usually want to do what we want them to do. But they don't have the votes to do it because the Republicans are in charge and the majority rules. Okay, so you can beat up on a Ron Reynolds or a Sheila Jackson Lee, but they advocate for us. But they don't have the votes to win. And so we got to look more big picture.
I agree.
You see what I'm saying?
Agree.
And so, because we'll beat up the people that want to do something. They're trying to do something. They can't. It's just like Obama trying. He can't. And so we need to beat up on the people. You need to know the party, their affiliation, and the makeup of the congressional body that they vote with.
No, I agree.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So you can say, this person is here, this person believes in this, but what can we do as a community to change the demographics or balance the power in that whole body that they vote in? City council people and mayors are nonpartisan.
Right.
So then you can ask them specifically what they're doing. But mayors don't have anything to do with the criminal justice system.
Right.
Because they're the city of Fort Bend, or the city of Missouri City, or
Right.
whatever little city it is, Rosenberg.
Sugar Land, yep.
They control the police officers. So when they run, which I think will be this year, you can find out, make sure that when the mayors come through, what is your stance on your police chief? Because the mayors appoint the police chiefs.
Okay.
What is their chase policy going to be? How will you deal with juveniles? Does everybody have to be arrested? Do kids that are in school, can they be treated like we were treated, like you were treated when you were in school and you did a teenage prank? Or do
Right.
the police have to be called into it? You can deal with that with your city officials when there's city elections. Do you understand what I'm saying? But if they're, you need to know more about your government and how it's organized and who's coming.
Yep. I
The city
agree.
is different.
I agree. And so with the church, we like to go back and forth of separation of church and state. So,
No,
on one
they're all
hand,
501(c)(3)s,
right.
and so
You're
we're
right.
businesses, and we can't do them. But all that says is the majority of your work cannot be for political gain. Somebody coming through every election season is not going to be the majority of your work.
Right.
Okay, so it doesn't apply. So
Yeah.
you just tell them a former accountant and lawyer told them it doesn't apply.
Okay.
And you can get involved with anybody can get involved with their parishioners. And you're talking about something for your parishioners.
Right.
Okay? And your parishioners are not just about money and making money and doing building funds and doing the same old thing we've been doing.
Right.
The churches are the things that created the civil rights movement and got us what we are.
Exactly.
But we don't have those. You wouldn't see a preacher now speaking out about it.
Yeah.
But we have 1 minute. So now I want you to try to summarize what you've learned from your experience with your daughter.
Oh, wow. I've learned that it is important for me to stay connected with what's going on with the laws. I've also learned that it's important as a parent to emphasize, the respect of authority and not to, be disrespectful. Take it to court, basically. Don't try and get out of it on your own. And then I've also learned, I've learned a lot of patience in this, and realizing that it's going to take time. I mean, I'm on fire. I'm outraged. I want things to happen tomorrow, and so I've learned that this has been put in place long before I was even born. And it's just going to take some time. But, the time that I put into it, it has to be very thoughtful and strategic and basically, with the staying power. I can't give up. So,
I'm
be
getting
patient.
assigned to wrap up. So,
Okay.
Cynthia, let me tell you, thank you for sharing your story. I know it's the beginning of the story.
Yes,
it's
it
not
is.
the end. So hopefully as it progresses, we can talk in the future. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something about Cynthia Rushing's experience with the criminal justice system that you can share. In a couple of weeks, we'll have it on YouTube. And you can share this with other parents of kids getting out of high school, going to college. And don't forget to call me at any time at my office. You can Google Vivian King and set up a story, a criminal justice story that you want to tell. Because remember, I want to tell your story. Thank you for watching. Good night. Good night. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with a crime. This is a show where I try to educate real stories. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with a crime. This is a show where I try